Hello and welcome to another video. We're going to be talking about testing again today. It seems to be half the videos I've been making recently, but you know, it is what it is. So I frequently run, well, I say frequently, I actually really sparingly run into this problem, but I found like a pretty good pattern that I like to use in this case, which is when I need to assert something that has a really difficult object to build. Now, granted, if you are asserting something that has a difficult object to build, that's probably a good indication that you should maybe refactor to make it easier. But I'm going to show you a technique that allows you to test it anyway. I couldn't find like a good small example, so I'm actually going to show you 2 or 3 examples from real code where I've written this pattern out before. And I did check the git blame to make sure that I did actually do this and I'm just not taking credit for someone else's work. But I believe I saw this originally when working at Yelp a long time ago, but of course that was all lost to closed source. So the first of these examples is I'm going to show you a test for a helper in pre-commit. There's this thing inside pre-commit called the error handler. This is how pre-commit manages all of its error messaging and, you know, fatal errors versus unexpected errors versus etc. And it has this long piece of diagnostics that it prints when it crashes. This helps me figure out what's going on, especially when people are running weird versions of Python or Git or pre-commit or modified stuff or things like that, and tries to write a log file, blah, blah, blah. But the piece of logic that I wanted to test is actually in this function here, where there's a particular set of branches that adjusts the messaging and exit code of the function, or of the error handler itself. And the actual bulk of all that writing and such is inside this helper function. And I didn't really care about the functionality of this. I just wanted to test this particular context manager here itself, and so I wrote some tests for it. And if we look at those, the way it works is it mocks out that log and exit function, the one that actually performs the side effects, because I want to test the system under test without actually, exiting or writing a log file or doing any sort of the side effects here, but I still wanted to validate that it does what I want it to do. And so you can see I've written a series of tests. There's no error, so it shouldn't be called. If we raise an exception inside this handler, we should expect it to be called. Assert called once with is one way that you can use the mock object to assert the insides. I actually really don't like this API here. I did another video on that. If you search asserting on my channel, you'll be able to find that video. But the way this function works is you pass in the arguments and keyword arguments as if it had been called, and then it will, if they match, then it passes. If it doesn't match, then there's an error. And unfortunately, if we look back to our implementation here, I intentionally didn't show the last line on there. The last thing that's passed to this function is actually really difficult to construct consistently. It's the entire traceback stringified, which ends up getting written to the log file somewhere in here. But it's the traceback itself. And so we don't really want to, it's going to be difficult for us to write a test that targets this. We do kind of want to assert that it has a full traceback, but we don't, we're not going to be able to do this exactly in just an easy assert called with. And so what I did in my test here is instead of asserting that particular argument there, I pass in this nice sentinel value. Well, it's not really a sentinel value because it's a little bit more magic. I guess it is still a sentinel, called mock.any. Now the cool thing about mock.any is unittest import mock.any is equal to anything, even itself. And so, you can use this as a placeholder value where you don't really want to write an assertion in line, and maybe you want to write a more complicated assertion later. I would recommend, if you're using this, that you do write a more complicated assertion to actually still validate that information and not just completely skip it. But obviously, you can sprinkle this as much or as little as you want. I do think that this is a little bit of a code smell if you need it, but there are some situations where it is really effective and really useful. This I think is one of them. This test also highlights another cool thing that I wrote, although it's not really the subject of that video, which is that I did actually test thoroughly this error message here. So I used mock.any to ignore it in this call here, but then I made sure to assert, pull out the actual argument itself and write an assertion against it. So this is the call args I think it's list of lists or call of call, I don't know. anyways, it's indexable, so you can grab the actual argument, and then I used a regular expression to test it. This actually uses the re-assert library that I wrote. I actually really like this library. The idea came to me. I don't want to say the idea came to me in a dream, but it was very similar to that in that I was on vacation in France, and I was like, huh, I really want this idea to exist, but I'm just going to show you it really quick. It is a library where you can write re-assert.matches. You can write a regular expression. So let's say that it starts with, I don't know, foo, for example. And you can say m.assert matches, let's say food. Great, that matches. But if we tried to match forward instead, the object itself will point to the first character where the regex stopped matching. And so this can be really useful for debugging stuff. I really like this. It was like a cool idea. I was like, I wonder if this is possible, and then sort of made it happen. But anyway, that's re-assert. That's off topic for this video. So you can see here, like in this test, it was difficult to test the traceback directly through an equality check, but I was able to pull that particular argument out and then test it later. And so I find that this pattern is pretty nice for using this in assert called once with. It's also useful for equals assertions as well, which is what I'm going to show you in my old, where did this go? My old work. And I found that I wrote both of these. I wrote this one, and then somebody copy pasted one of mine. I think this is unrelated. This is someone just skipping out on testing it. But you can see kind of a similar pattern to what I was describing there. You can see that there's this any here. There's this big assertion on the data object that's retrieved from this URL endpoint, I believe it was. And this event object is fairly complicated. It's the Sentry event, and so it has all sorts of junk in it. And so testing it with strict equality was difficult here. So pop in an any, skip out on the difficult chest here, and then you can check the particular parts that you want to test below. These were the things that were deemed important in validating that data object there. Yeah, so that's kind of the idea here. Hopefully you found this useful. If there are additional things you would like me to explain, leave a comment below or reach out to me on the various platforms. But thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.